My name is Kendall, and I'm 38 years old. For the past 15 years, my life has been a carefully constructed illusion, built on the fragile hope of belonging. I'd poured my heart and soul into a family that, in hindsight, never truly accepted me. I married Mark when I was 23, fresh out of college, full of dreams and a yearning for a connection I hadn't found in my own fractured upbringing. His family, particularly his mother, Eleanor, always felt just out of reach, like a beautiful, shimmering mirage I could never quite grasp. I tried. Every holiday, every birthday, every family gathering was an audition, a desperate plea for validation. I cooked, I cleaned, I listened, I smiled, all while a quiet voice in the back of my head whispered, "Are you enough?" That whisper became a roar on a sweltering Saturday in July, at my sister-in-law Sarah's wedding. The words, delivered with a chilling casualness by the woman who was supposed to be my second mother, echoed through the grand ballroom, shattering not just my carefully constructed facade, but my very understanding of family. "You're not family," she said, her eyes devoid of warmth, even as the celebratory music swelled around us. That was it. The breaking point. The moment the mirage dissolved and the stark, painful reality crashed down. Have you ever felt like an outsider, even when you're standing right in the middle of a crowd? Hit that like button, and tell me your story in the comments. You might just be surprised by how many of us are out there. The air was thick with the scent of lilies and anticipation. Sarah, Mark's younger sister, looked radiant in her ivory gown, her laughter echoing through the opulent hall of the Fairmont Grand. This was supposed to be a joyous day, a celebration of new beginnings, a day where I, as her sister-in-law, felt like an integral part of the family tapestry. I'd spent weeks helping Sarah with wedding preparations, from painstakingly assembling invitation suites to enduring endless dress fittings. I'd even managed to get Eleanor to crack a smile once or twice during the planning, a feat I considered a minor miracle. Mark was at the altar, beaming at his sister, and I felt a pang of warmth, a fleeting sense of belonging. Grandma Rose, Mark's paternal grandmother, sat beside me, her hand resting gently on my arm. She was the one constant, the quiet, unwavering beacon of kindness in a family that often felt like a labyrinth. She always treated me like her own, a stark contrast to Eleanor's perpetual coolness. The ceremony was beautiful, a blur of vows and tears and triumphant applause. As the reception began, the energy shifted. The clinking of glasses, the murmur of conversations, the rhythmic beat of the live band, it all contributed to a crescendo of celebration. I watched Mark dance with his mother, a pang of longing in my chest. I yearned for that easy intimacy, that natural connection. But even on a day dedicated to love and union, I felt a familiar tension in the pit of my stomach, a premonition of something unsettling. I pushed it down, determined to enjoy the day, to revel in Sarah's happiness. If only I had known what was coming. The dance floor pulsed with energy, but a different kind of beat was building in my heart. I was laughing with Sarah, genuinely laughing, a rare, uninhibited sound that felt liberating in the midst of the controlled chaos of the reception. We were reminiscing about a particularly disastrous cake tasting, and she had just smeared frosting on my nose. Suddenly, a shadow fell over us. Eleanor. Her smile, usually reserved and polite, was tighter than usual. "Sarah, darling, can I steal you for a moment?" she asked, her voice sugary sweet, but with an underlying edge I'd learned to recognize. Sarah, still giggling, nodded and excused herself. I watched them walk away, a familiar knot tightening in my stomach. Eleanor had always had a way of making me feel like an intrusion, a foreign object in their carefully curated family unit. It wasn't overt hostility, not usually. It was the subtle exclusion, the veiled comments, the way her eyes would sweep over me as if assessing a flaw. I tried to shake it off, to rejoin the festivities, but a sense of unease settled over me. Later, as the evening deepened and the wine flowed more freely, I found myself standing near the dessert table, admiring the towering wedding cake. Grandma Rose was by my side, her eyes twinkling as she pointed out a particularly delicate sugar flower. "Isn't it lovely, Kendall?" she murmured. "Just like you, my dear." Her words were a balm, a momentary reprieve from the gnawing insecurity that often plagued me around Mark's family. Just then Eleanor approached, her face flushed from a few too many glasses of champagne. Her eyes, usually so calculating, were a little unfocused. She looked directly at me, a mirthless smile playing on her lips. "You know, Kendall," she began, her voice a little louder than necessary, causing a few heads to turn, "it's truly wonderful to see Sarah so happy. This is a special day for our family." My heart began to pound. I knew where this was going. I braced myself. Grandma Rose squeezed my arm gently, as if sensing the impending blow. She's so lucky to have Mark, such a good son. And now with David, it's just perfect. She paused, taking a slow sip of her drink, her gaze still fixed on me. And then the words, delivered with a chilling casualness that made them all the more devastating. You're not family, Kendall. Not really. The world tilted. The music, the laughter, the clinking of glasses. It all receded into a distant hum. Her words hung in the air, sharp and poisonous, slicing through years of effort, years of longing. It wasn't just what she said, but how she said it, with a dismissive wave of her hand, as if I were nothing more than an inconvenient fly. Grandma Rose gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. I felt a cold wave wash over me, a sensation of utter disbelief and profound hurt. All those years, all those efforts, all those moments I'd swallowed my pride and put on a brave face, it had all been for nothing. I felt exposed, humiliated, my deepest fear confirmed by the one person whose acceptance I had so desperately craved. The silence that followed was deafening, amplified by the sudden clarity of the moment. The illusion shattered, revealing the stark, unadorned truth. I was an outsider. And in that moment I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that I couldn't pretend otherwise any longer. The air crackled with unspoken words, a storm brewing beneath the surface of the polite wedding facade. My mind reeled. You're not family. The words echoed, each syllable a hammer blow against my chest. My breath hitched. I could feel the eyes of a few curious guests on us, and a wave of intense shame washed over me. Grandma Rose, however, was not silent. Eleanor, she exclaimed, her voice sharp and uncharacteristically stern. What a dreadful thing to say. Eleanor, still slightly inebriated, merely scoffed. Oh, come on, Mother. It's true. Kendall knows it. She's just Mark's wife. The dismissal in her tone was like a physical blow. Mark, who had just approached, drawn by the sudden tension, looked from his mother's flushed face to my ashen one. Mom, what's going on? He asked, his brow furrowed with confusion. Eleanor, ever the master manipulator, quickly adopted a sweeter tone. Nothing, dear. Just a little family chat. But her eyes, though slightly unfocused, held a triumphant glint when they met mine. She knew exactly what she'd done. I couldn't speak. The words were stuck in my throat, a lump of pain and disbelief. All the years of trying to fit in, of biting my tongue, of forcing smiles at comments that stung, it all came crashing down. I remembered the first Thanksgiving I spent with them, eager to impress, only to have Eleanor criticize my homemade cranberry sauce. The countless times she'd subtly excluded me from family anecdotes, or made plans with Sarah right in front of me, without an invitation. The way she'd always referred to Mark and me as Mark and his wife, never Mark and Kendall, or just Kendall. It was a slow, steady erosion of my self-worth, a constant reminder that I was tolerated, not embraced. And Mark, he was a kind man, a loving husband, but he was also Eleanor's son. He was blind to her subtle digs, or perhaps he chose to be. He'd often dismiss my hurt feelings as overthinking, or being too sensitive. That's just Mom, he'd say, a shrug his only defense. I'd always blamed myself, thinking I wasn't trying hard enough, wasn't good enough, wasn't family enough. But standing there, exposed and humiliated, I finally saw it for what it was, a deliberate, calculated exclusion. Grandma Rose, sensing my distress, gently took my hand. Her touch was a lifeline in that swirling sea of pain. She looked at Eleanor with an expression of profound disappointment. Eleanor, you truly have a cruel streak, she said, her voice low but firm. Eleanor, for a split second, looked taken aback. But then her usual defiance returned. It's the truth, Mother. Why pretend? Mark, finally catching on to the severity of the situation, stepped between us. Mom, that's enough. Kendall, are you all right? He reached for me, but I instinctively flinched away. His concern, belated and somewhat clueless, only added to the sting. How could he not see this? How could he have been so oblivious to the years of subtle cruelty? The music, which had faded into the background, suddenly felt oppressively loud. I felt a surge of adrenaline, a desperate need to escape, to breathe air that wasn't tainted by their indifference. My gaze met Grandma Rose's. In her eyes I saw not pity, but understanding and a quiet strength. And in that silent exchange, a decision was made. A silent understanding passed between us, a shared breath before the plunge into the unknown. The words were still ringing in my ears, echoing louder than the celebratory music. You're not family. My heart was a raw, exposed nerve. I looked at Mark, his face a mixture of confusion and belated concern. It was a concern that felt hollow, born not of empathy for my pain, but perhaps of embarrassment for his mother's outburst. "Kendall, what's wrong?" he asked again, reaching for my arm. I pulled away. What was wrong? Everything. Everything was wrong. I turned to Grandma Rose. Her eyes, usually sparkling with life, were filled with a profound sadness, but also a steely resolve. She didn't say a word, just squeezed my hand again, a silent question in her gaze. "What do you want to do?" My mind was racing, a kaleidoscope of past hurts and present humiliations. The years of trying, of sacrificing, of bending myself into shapes that didn't fit, all to earn a place that was never truly mine. The memory of my own fractured family, the yearning for a sense of belonging that had led me to accept so much less than I deserved. And then the ultimate insult. I looked around the room at the smiling faces, the dancing couples, the oblivious joy. This wasn't my joy. This wasn't my family. A fierce, protective instinct ignited within me. Not just for myself, but for the little girl inside me who had always yearned to be loved unconditionally. "Grandma," I whispered, my voice hoarse. Would you come with me?" Her eyes widened slightly, then softened. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. She understood. She always understood. Without a word, she nodded. Eleanor, still hovering nearby, let out a disdainful huff. "Oh, for goodness sake, Kendall, don't be so dramatic." Mark, finally grasping the gravity of the situation, looked aghast. "Kendall, wait. Where are you going?" he pleaded, stepping towards me. But it was too late. The dam had broken. The years of suppressed hurt, the anger, the feeling of being invisible. It all surged forward. "I'm going home, Mark," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, though my hands were trembling. "And I'm taking Grandma with me." Eleanor gasped. Mark looked stunned, his mouth agape. I didn't wait for a response. I turned and, with Grandma Rose's frail hand firmly in mine, began to walk towards the exit. Each step was a defiance, a reclamation. The plush carpet felt softer beneath my feet, the air lighter in my lungs. I could feel eyes on us, whispers following our departure, but I didn't care. The stares of strangers were nothing compared to the sting of a mother-in-law's rejection. As we walked out of the opulent ballroom, leaving the sounds of celebration behind, a profound sense of liberation began to bloom in my chest. It wasn't just the wedding I was leaving behind. It was a lifetime of striving for acceptance from people who were never going to offer it. The finality of the closing door wasn't an ending, but a resounding declaration of a new beginning. The cool night air was a shock after the stuffy ballroom. The city lights blurred as we sped away in a taxi, Grandma Rose holding my hand tightly. Neither of us spoke for a long time, the silence a comfortable blanket between us. I could feel the tension slowly drain from my shoulders, replaced by a strange mix of sorrow and exhilaration. Finally, Grandma Rose broke the silence. "Are you all right, dear?" she asked, her voice soft. I looked at her, her kind eyes reflecting the streetlights. "No, Grandma," I admitted, a tear finally escaping and tracing a path down my cheek. "I'm not, but I will be." She nodded, a knowing look on her face. "You did the right thing, Kendall. No one deserves to be treated that way, especially not family." "But I'm not family, am I?" I whispered, the words still stinging. Grandma Rose squeezed my hand. "Oh, Kendall, family isn't just about blood. It's about love, respect, and acceptance. Eleanor has forgotten that. You, my dear, are more family to me than anyone else in that room." Her words were a balm to my wounded soul. The next few days were a blur of emotions. Mark called repeatedly, his voice a mixture of anger, confusion, and something that sounded suspiciously like fear. He was furious that I had embarrassed his mother and ruined Sarah's wedding. He couldn't grasp the depth of my hurt, the years of subtle abuse that had led to that moment. He saw it as a singular incident, a dramatic overreaction on my part. I tried to explain, to articulate the cumulative effect of Eleanor's words and actions over 15 years. But it was like talking to a brick wall. He was so deeply entrenched in his mother's narrative, so unwilling to see her flaws, that my truth was simply incomprehensible to him. "She didn't mean it, Kendall," he'd say. "She was just drunk." But I knew better. The truth in Eleanor's eyes came out when her guard was down. I moved into a small apartment with Grandma Rose. It felt incredibly liberating to be away from the constant judgment, the suffocating atmosphere of Mark's family home. Grandma Rose, despite her age, was a rock. She listened without judgment, offered comfort without pity, and cooked the most delicious comfort food. We spent hours talking, not just about the incident, but about life, about what it truly means to be a family. She shared stories of her own life, of overcoming adversity, of finding strength in unexpected places. She helped me see that my worth wasn't tied to Eleanor's approval or Mark's inability to defend me. It was inherent, a part of who I was, regardless of anyone else's opinion. The pain was still there, a dull ache, but it was slowly being replaced by a burgeoning sense of self-respect and a fierce determination to build a life where I was truly valued. The quiet hum of our new home was a lullaby, a stark contrast to the cacophony of my past. The weeks that followed were a journey of quiet healing and profound self-discovery. Living with Grandma Rose was a revelation. Her wisdom was a steadying force, her presence a constant reminder of what true family felt like. We established a comfortable routine, sharing meals, reading together, and simply enjoying each other's company. I found myself rediscovering hobbies I'd abandoned, pursuits I'd put aside in my relentless effort to appease Eleanor. I started painting again, something I'd loved in college, but had neglected for years. The vibrant colors on the canvas felt like an extension of the burgeoning vibrancy in my own life. Mark continued to call, initially with a demanding tone, then with a growing desperation. He wanted me to come home, to apologize to his mother, to put things back to normal. But normal for me had been a constant state of anxiety and unworthiness. I couldn't go back to that. I gently but firmly explained that I needed space, that I needed to figure out what was best for me. He couldn't seem to grasp it. His world revolved around his mother's approval, and he couldn't comprehend a life lived outside that sphere. Our conversations became shorter, more strained, eventually dwindling to just a few texts a week. It was painful, the slow erosion of a 15-year marriage, but I knew it was necessary. I started therapy, something I had resisted for years, always telling myself I was strong enough to handle things on my own. It was one of the best decisions I ever made. My therapist helped me unpack years of internalized criticism, to recognize the patterns of emotional manipulation, and to truly understand that Eleanor's behavior was a reflection of her own issues, not a judgment on my worth. I learned about setting boundaries, about prioritizing my own mental and emotional well-being. It was a slow, sometimes painful process, but with each session, I felt myself growing stronger, more resilient, more at peace. I was no longer the Kendall who craved external validation, the woman who would bend over backward for a sliver of acceptance. I was becoming the Kendall who knew her worth, who chose herself. And in that choice, I found a freedom I never knew I was missing. The quiet hum of my own strength began to drown out the echoes of past hurts. It's been 2 years since Sarah's wedding. 2 years since Eleanor's words became the catalyst for my liberation. Grandma Rose and I still live together, and our bond has only deepened. She is, without a doubt, the true matriarch of my life, a living testament to unconditional love and acceptance. I visit my own family more often now, slowly rebuilding those relationships on healthier foundations. Mark and I divorced 6 months ago. It was amicable as a divorce can be after 15 years. He eventually, painstakingly, came to understand that I wasn't leaving him. I was choosing myself. He's still very much in his mother's orbit, and I've accepted that's his path. I wish him well, but my path is different. The most important lesson I've learned is that family is not defined by blood, but by behavior. It's about who shows up for you, who respects you, who loves you unconditionally. It's about creating a safe space where you can be your authentic self, flaws and all. I no longer chase acceptance. I cultivate it within myself and seek it in those who freely offer it. My life is richer, more peaceful, and authentically mine. I've found a community of friends who truly see me, and I'm slowly, deliberately, building a future filled with genuine connections. If you're in a similar situation, feeling like an outsider in your own life, remember that you have the power to choose your family. You have the power to walk away from what diminishes you and walk towards what nourishes your soul. What does family truly mean to you? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's remind each other that we are all worthy of belonging, exactly as we are. My heart, once a fractured puzzle, is now whole, filled with the quiet confidence of a woman who finally found her true home within herself.